Vincent stepped past the other human and sat heavily on some old crate. He pulled his mask off, needing to breathe freely before rubbing a hand over his face. It couldn't be her. Don't let it be her. He'd lost his dad when he was little, and despite living for a year now in the city, he always assumed he was going to be reunited with his mother. Somehow. Someday. To find out that she might have died? No. Just no. He looked up to ask Brian about her, when he saw the way the man was looking down at him. I know you, don't I? What? I'm Vincent. Nah, I mean, I've got it. He snapped his fingers. You're one of those fucking EE shitbags. Excuse me? Vincent blinked, confused for a moment before realizing what he was referring to. I read about you. You're like the security guy, got a record a mile long. You're a real piece of filth. Wait. Vincent tried to start, but the other human raised his tie-bar cannon. If this is some sort of bizarre EE utopia, you can count me out. I don't know what kind of torture this all is or why you and your sick friends are doing it, but it's gone way too far. Wait. I lived almost my whole life in the Bijou and never asked for any kind of trouble. But once all the governments join up, I had to deal with some of your inbred followers calling me an immigrant. Even if I was, which I'm not, I worked hard to get where I was. It wasn't some sort of conspiracy that all these lazy trailer trash thugs were losing jobs to honest, hardworking refugees. And another thing, shut the fuck up and let me explain! Vincent finally yelled out, shaking his hands to get the point across. Brian lifted his blaster a bit in response to Vincent yelling, but didn't pull the trigger. Thank you. Now, the very night I was abducted, I discovered the truth about the EE. I could have told, please let me finish. Vincent stressed. I discovered how horrible it really was. It made me grow up from being an insecure, impressionable idiot very quickly. I killed Eric and then gave a whole ton of evidence to a newspaper and the police. I stole millions in funding and tried to get out of the city. That's when I saw some bright light and then, the worms. Brian studied Vincent carefully for a moment and began to nod. That's right. I was hearing about that on the radio all day. I must have been taken later that day then with the time change and everything. They'd said there'd been a possible assassination, lots of stolen money, evidence of some horrible things. That was all you? That was all me. Vincent nodded. I was trying to escape the capital with my mother, and instead ended up in a worm test lab. What about you? There was not. I was driving home from the clinic. There was some sort of bright light. I panicked thinking it was a big rig who fell asleep and veered off the road. Then I woke up in a lab, met Catherine while we were being tested on. She had some good things to say about you, which is why I'm giving you the benefit of a doubt. Finally, the other human lowered his gun. Vincent sighed and closed his eyes, trying to think of the best way to ask about her, now that he'd settled the matter of his past with the EE with Brian. Speaking of Catherine, was she an older woman? Nah. Vincent sighed heavily in relief. Thank whatever higher powers there may be. So, she was young. Well, she looked like we do. But I was long in the tooth before I woke up, and now it looked like I'm in my 20s again, fresh as a pup. Vincent looked up, now worried once more. What? Yeah, I guess you were already in your 20s, so it didn't matter. While they did some terrible things to us in there, they did a great job giving us our youth back. I guess it was just so they could experiment for longer, but it's paid off since I escaped. No way could I have done this in my flabby old body. Vincent was hesitant to ask, but he had to know. Did she have a little dimple on her left shoulder? What? Well, you'd find one of those old XK339 vaccination scars? Nah, but she had this wonderful dark hair with just a few streaks of crimson or something in it. Brian smiled as Vincent just got more worried. Sort of makes you think of the final reddish rays of a sunset against a dark sky. Dark green eyes that make you think of some sort of old forest, deep in the old... Vincent paused and then just growled. I can't even properly describe her without being able to mention things back home. She was kind and sensitive. Oh, there was a birthmark on her arm here. Vincent tapped his left arm just above the elbow on the outside. Then Brian nodded, and Vincent's heart completely sank. Once more, things became dark and he had trouble breathing. From a million miles away, he could hear Brian ask, "How did you know her?" "She's my mother," Vincent whispered, barely audible by the other human before he started to cry. "She can't be gone. She can't." "She might not be." Vincent looked up, his eyes still stinging as the emotions began to rush through his body. But he tried to hold back and hear what the other was saying. "I'm the original, but the copy of her that died was a clone. About a year ago, something happened. They used to bring out her original, but stopped after they lost this sort of gold orb they used to open up the pod. I'm not quite sure it's what my pastor meant when he was talking about a soul, but you can sort of feel her inside. It's hard to explain." Vincent began to wipe tears from his eyes as he tried to breathe more fully. The orb in his apartment. It always calmed him down because it reminded him of happier times. And then, after experiencing his mother's memories, she showed up. He hadn't known those were her memories yet, so he hadn't figured it out. Then again, how could he? All this crazy fucking advanced technology messed with his head. "I've got it." "You've got what? The orb? You've got the orb?" Brian looked to Vincent, who nodded. "That's great. We can get her out then. We just have to find the base again and, well, raid it." "You don't know where it is?" "I spent 2 months or so getting chased all around this hellhole. I'm totally lost. I just moved from hiding spot to hiding spot, avoiding these satyr-looking things." Brian shrugged and then sort of waved his hook hand around. "I installed this about 2 weeks ago after losing my hand." Vincent was still a little teary-eyed, but he was feeling better now, focused on the idea of rescuing his mother's original. His mother. The whole ordeal of being a clone messed with his head sometimes. He had a year to get used to it, but trying to override a lifetime of natural instincts was tricky at times. He rubbed at his eyes for a moment and took a slow, deep breath as he tried to focus. "And trust me, if I had no hope of seeing Catherine again, I'd have gone suicidal after escaping," Brian added as Vincent looked over. That just reminded him of a whole other issue the situation brought up. "So, you and my mother..." The two humans studied each other carefully for a few split seconds, before Vincent nodded slowly. "It had been 16 years since my father died. I suppose it had to happen sooner or later. And while you jumped to conclusions a bit fast, I was a complete piece of shit for years, so I deserve some of that." Vincent extended his hand, and Brian looked at him for a moment before extending his own and giving Vincent a firm shake. "I'm not going to say I'm 100% convinced that you're actually a decent person after what you've done for the EE. But if everything I've heard about the Shade cleaning up the city this last year, and the way Catherine talks about you, I won't hold it against you either. It seems like you're trying to be a decent person and redeem yourself." Vincent snorted and shook his head a little. "I'm so used to people either fearing me, hating me, or wanting to use me based on the fact I'm the Shade. I've forgotten what it's like to just be Vincent. Well, if you're willing to give me a chance, that's all I can ask for. I have no idea if it helps, but I thought I was doing the right thing. I didn't even remember it until days ago. The worms had blocked most of my pre-abduction memories. They were just flashes. It all broke when someone spoke about my tattoo." "Tattoo?" "Oh." Vincent pulled his glove off and tugged up the sleeve of his jacket to show the 88 on his wrist. "Creature 88, Brian said as he finally understood, while Vincent nodded. "So they speaking—" "Don't!" Vincent quickly cut him off. "You'll puke again. They speak common. We all do, apparently. Except for this one set of memories I saw recently. It was another man. Vincent rubbed his chin for a moment. "He came from the water engineers. God made the land and the oceans, but the blank made blank. famous for their red light district and windmills and wood shoes. What? You mean he was Vincent quickly waved his hand. Shit. It's like talking through a minefield, Brian muttered. You'll start to get used to it, Vincent promised. Anyway, yes, they saw it and just started calling me Creature 88. I can't say the name for ourselves, so it's stuck. You mean to tell me our race will henceforth be named and classified based on a tattoo meant to signify an incredibly evil and racist organization? The other man arched his brows as he gave Vincent a look. Vincent shrugged. Sorry. Though the purpose was to try and combat the influx of immigrants who were pushing out the locals. If they'd been... He saw the look Brian was giving him. Fuck, sorry. Shit, some sort of instinct. Yes, evil, terrible. Again, I killed their leader once I finally understood what the hell I was doing. If it helps, before I even knew I needed to make amends for what I'd done, I was already doing as much good as possible. I've died over 100 times, I've saved a few dozen lives at this point, if not more, and I'm doing everything I can to improve the city. But you come back, it's not like you're dying for real. No, I die for real. I have to relive it almost every time, too. So for each death, I experience it twice, usually. Burns are probably the worst, but drowning is awful, too. Most of the time, if I can get away with it, I'll just shoot myself to make things quicker. I've broken all of my bones at this point, I think. When? Don't they make you relive it? Brian seemed surprised, obviously not having truly considered the implications of being cloned yet. If I upload before committing suicide to recover from wounds, anything that would impair my ability to work results in body destruction. Once I was knocked into a vat of molten steel. I am exceptionally grateful that black box was destroyed, even if it meant another week of work to catch the criminals. I must have solved it when they shoved me into the vat, but I'll never know for sure. Vincent paused as he thought back on this last year. Another time I was stuck in the smoldering ruins of a building for a few days. I was trapped under the rubble. There was still some sort of chemical fire, or metal fire, or something nearby, so it was hot. I had been burned bad and crushed. Some animal was eating the remains of my right arm. When they found me, they shot me, but they needed to know what was up with my half-eaten arm and what happened in the case. So you might think it's less of an issue knowing I'll come back, but at the same time I willingly destroy my body time and time again to save people. I know what it'll be like. To snap my femur in two, to be literally burned alive, or have my lungs pulled out through my mouth from a sudden pressure change. Jesus Christ almighty, Brian muttered softly, obviously realizing the curse that was Vincent's supposed immortality. Vincent nodded and pointed at Brian's hook. While I don't know how much the hook hurt, I know how much it hurt to lose it. Or close. How'd you make that work anyway? I'm a doctor. I saw time in the... He paused. People from... They loved spicy food, crawdads, jambalaya, alcohol. They rebelled 30 years back, roughly, in the south of what used to be... along the Gulf of that M name. Vincent nodded. The Creole Rebellion. You had to amputate back then? Brian nodded in response. Sure did. Towards the end we were lacking in a lot of supplies, not to mention the several super hurricanes over the next decade. Before unification, getting prosthetics was very hard to come by. Right. Well, back to the present. You said the version of my mother who died was just a clone? What happened? Like I said, one day they stopped waking up the original. I don't know how it works, but they needed that gold orb thing to do it, and it disappeared. Over the next few months, or I think it was months, Vincent nodded. Keeping accurate time in the clutches of the worms was nearly impossible. They just brought out a clone. Then one day we woke up somewhere else. A facility rather than a ship. No more worms that I could see. Those satyr instead. Vincent nodded and tried to piece together some sort of timeline in his head. Black blood had been made for about a year, shortly after he showed up. Well, they started keeping me up a lot. Drawn blood, other samples, Whatever they were doing, they felt it necessary to also let me spend a lot of time with your mother, or her clone. Some part of me says it was nothing more than proximity and the need to find solace with another person. But more of me knows that we really found love. Vincent held up a hand. Please, you seem like a good guy so far, and obviously my mother did in fact love you. Does love you. Whatever it is. But I don't need to hear any kind of details about that right now. I'm sure you'll have to hear it eventually. Eventually is fine. Right now isn't. Vincent stressed. Regardless, over the months they got sloppy. A month and a half ago, 2, thereabouts, we finally had smuggled some things to break free and escaped. She, her clone, died in the escape. I pulled her black box. I know, I saw it. Right, Brian nodded. Well, a week, maybe a week and a half ago, I got caught after hiding since our escape. It was a booby trap instead of an attack. The first they started using those, I had a choice. Cut my hand off and escape or get captured. What about the black box? Why was it still stuck in your hand? I needed something to squeeze to make a better fist. I used a tourniquet to limit blood loss and some drugs I found to numb everything. Then I started cutting. Once I cut it free, I went to pick it up, but they surprised me. I barely got away. What I don't get is why they designed the trap like they did. Didn't they know I'd cut myself free? Vincent shook his head. Have you seen any signs that these Xenos use hooks? More often than not, losing a limb kills them. Well, not the big felons, but the normal citizens. Xenos? What kind of word is that? You mean the aliens? Vincent was slightly taken aback. Here's the racist now. The other human frowned. What are you talking about? Alien implies foreign. We're the aliens. I'm an immigrant in this new place, and so are you. More or less. Xeno is the more appropriate term. They're other than what we know, what we're familiar with. A catch-all and perhaps more PC term for other species. The biggest lecture in the backwoods war vet doctor about political correctness? Reformed bigot, Vincent countered. And just because you have a history like that doesn't free you from being a bigot yourself. The man nodded, conceding the point. Fair enough. I guess I was always more concerned with those around me than the possibility of anyone from another planet. Again, this is their home, not ours. I got it, Brian said, and shook his head before giving Vincent a careful look. So then, Mr. Reformed Bigot, you have any concerns about me and your mother? Vincent shook his head. I'm sure my mother saw something in you. I felt her emotions and the memories. Deep love. He sighed and shrugged. My dad died years ago, like I said, but I never really saw her with anyone else, and couldn't imagine it. I didn't think of her as a true person. I thought of her as my mom, you know? He looked to the other human. How do you mean? He asked, looking curious. Like, shit. She's Catherine to the rest of the world, but to me, she's Mom. When I found out other moms sometimes go nuts and try to kill their kids, or abandon them and do their own thing, I was honestly shocked. I only had my own mother to compare them to, so it took a long time before I realized everyone's a person. They have their own motivations, their own hopes, dreams, and things like that. I have trouble reminding myself just because she's my mother and I owe everything to her, doesn't mean there's some sort of blood pact, soul-binding oath, where she's dedicated to me in the same way. I spent years being an angry, violent teen, and then an angry, violent 20-year-old who was heading up security for the EE. Perhaps she never saw anyone else because of me, of the people I surrounded us with. Then she meets you, and finally she's with someone like my dad again. Someone who isn't filth, like you said. Real piece of shit. Vincent trailed off as he looked at nothing. Brian watched him for a long while before filling the silence. So that's it. She loves me and you're okay with that? Vincent finally came back into reality and looked at the other human. Yes. He literally couldn't think of any reason to deny that, but Brian kept staring at him. What? You don't care about anything else? He eyed Vincent closely. Like what? You're one of those people starting with C back in the rebellion? I don't care. I think they had very valid points for rebellion. Unification ended the war before either side was proven right or wrong. I don't know if the local chapter of the EE was against you and your kin, but if I had been around, I'd have tried to bring you into the fold in a heartbeat. You're clearly hard-working and educated, not to mention determined and motivated. If anything, I'd have had more issue with the trailer trash who harassed you. Brian snorted. You would, wouldn't you? Never mind, they looked more like you than me. Vincent frowned at the comment. Why should that matter? Because of all the rhetoric about immigrants? Look, for me, back in the city was very clearly us against them. The us were locals. And yes, I know Atlantis has no natives since the entire island chain was risen out of the ocean. But I mean the original settlers. They saw the writing on the wall. They made a new home. They worked fucking hard to make it a superpower as fast as they could. They worked hard. This might sound strange, but when I selected my team of enforcers, there was every color you could have, and straight or gay, I didn't care. If I liked you and you worked hard, you became one of us. If you didn't, or you opposed us, you were one of them. Simple as that. I now know how totally wrong I was, but I swear upon my mother's very life that I thought I was doing the right thing. Brian had a sad look for a moment. How awful it is for our species that so often those doing terrible things believe it was for the right reasons. Vincent didn't argue the point. Back to the problem at hand, however. How do we rescue my mother? Brian sighed. We have to find the facility, but that's going to be very hard. They disguised it, and I've gotten totally lost since I escaped. Plus, the place was built like a fortress. Despite keeping us prisoners inside, it was obviously made more to keep people out than to keep them in. Fancy submachine gun there or no, it'll take a lot more than the two of us to get inside alive. It's near a waste management plant. I heard it in the background in the memory. I'm actually a rather good detective. Although, since there are Goodyear Vesh detectives and only one Shade who comes back to life no matter how much he gets shot, they usually send me on suicide runs now. Vincent shrugged. The point is, I'll find it. There are some Satyr heading here now. Brian started to get up and grab his gun. Where? Wait! They're friendly. Calm down. No shooting! The other human wearily sat back down, keeping the Tybar cannon in hand. You sure? Positive. I've seen inside their leader's head. He wants peace and democracy and security for all citizens, even species who are mostly felons. He's actually a very decent person. But also he is the chief spy master for their nation, so he might have some angles he's playing that I haven't seen. So let them help you, let them get you patched up, but tell them only what you're comfortable with. Brian nodded. Fair enough. No one knows you're here but him, his commandos, and I, so feel free to ask him anything you want. I get my memories checked constantly by others who will fuck all this up, and are likely reporting back to the people behind all this evil shit going on here in the city, so I can't stay long. I need to report back. They won't watch my memories today because I saw my head shrinker. I figure someone like you wouldn't value psychiatric professionals, the other scoffed. He's the chief spy master. He's playing them. Vincent shrugged. Well, that makes sense. The violent reformed bigot is getting help from a sociopath who spies on everyone. I know your mother loves you, but you need some very serious and professional help if you hope to get back in touch with reality. Vincent nodded as if in agreement, but his words said otherwise. Yeah. Right now I'm dying constantly and being groomed by one side to be some sort of sin-purifying Grim Reaper, while the other side is trying to set me up as some sort of holy icon of justice and peace. I'm not in a place where I can even see the ideal you have for reality, let alone touch it. This is reality now, for both of us. Brian stared at him for a moment before slowly nodding. You're right, but it's not healthy, that's for damn sure. But as you said, you're right. When we get home, I'll make sure to find you someone good for your mental health. If we get home, there's a good chance I'm going to prison for life on 3 counts of first or second-degree homicide, Vincent corrected. I hardly think the people will go hard on a man who killed some evil would-be tyrant. Vincent was about to argue the point when he thought it over. His plan was to keep killing people who were messing with the peace, which meant he'd been doing the same thing for a year now. If anything, he was being rewarded for his constant violence, just so long as it was carefully directed. Maybe Brian had a point. Maybe he underestimated the fact that murder was still murder. He wasn't sure. It was a problem if he ever got home, but not at the moment, so he pushed it to the back of his mind. Well, hopefully they'll get here soon and lead you out. He shrugged and was prepared to wait, when a voice spoke into his ear from the comm. We've been here since you mentioned rescuing your mother. Fuck! Vincent hissed in surprise, then looked around the building. Brian looked at him, obviously confused. They're already here, I guess. We didn't want to intrude until you called for us. Yeah, but you didn't mind eavesdropping? He said out loud. How else would we know when to come in? The voice said in his ear. The silver-suited satyr moved very carefully through the few entrances that were still open, stepping over the remains of their black-armored kin. Vincent was pulling off his harness as they approached. Well, get him back up top. I'm going to HQ before they start wondering where I am. You don't like the harness? The one closest asked, as it started up the stairs, avoiding the trapped step. It's fantastic, but I can't have it yet. Make sure your employer sends it to me with this gun. Make it seem like a gift. I'll play along. I don't want them knowing I've already used them. Keep it very official. I need to go now. He looked to Brian and nodded. They'll take care of you. We'll rescue my mother soon and maybe see about getting home. The other man smiled. I'd like that. See about making things official with Catherine. Get you calling me Dad. Not a chance in hell, Vincent said flatly, with enough force to make the other human arch his brows and lean back. Sorry. I didn't mean it to be so rough. But no. There's a chance I like you, and that we'll become good friends. But you never will be Dad to me. No offense. The other human shrugged and tilted his head. I suppose good friends will have to suffice. Take care, Vincent. Try not to beat up any defenseless immigrants on the way to wherever. I'll try. Vincent responded with a shake of his head, leaving the first human he'd met in a year to the hands of Mock's commandos, as he headed back to the tram that would take him to the HQ yet again. They'd likely have questions about the bombing of the checkpoint, and hopefully information about the strange surgery inflicted upon those Yervesh hostages. For everything he had figured out now, there was more that needed doing. Despite all that, he had nothing but energy and purpose in his stride. His mother was alive in some form or another. He held the key to her release, and he was going to see her again. If he had to move heaven and hell or slaughter the rest of the city to make it happen, he'd make it happen. Woe be upon any who dare oppose him.